The thing about Star Trek, and particularly about Star Trek publishing, is I've always seen it as a lens to look at society through. Yes, it's about Star Trek, but actually it's about society, and it's about Hollywood, and it's about what it's been like to be a woman, and how that's changed in the 60 years since Star Trek's been on air. If you get it right, the book does what Star Trek itself does, and it's about something. And I think that book is about something. I'm Ben Robinson. I'm a creative consultant for Fanhome on their Starships program, and I'm a creative director for Master Replicas and all their science fiction merch. I'm on Trek Untold this week, talking about all the Star Trek merch that's coming in the next year or so. You won't believe how much there is.
Hello and welcome back to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I am your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. As many people who are regular listeners or watchers of this show know, I am a Star Trek collector. Not just a podcaster, I'm not just a fan, I am someone who spends way too much money buying Star Trek things. And one of those things that I love very much are the toys. I have an enormous action figure collection, whether it's from Playmates, whether it's from Diamond Select or Art Asylum, even some Blue Bricks here and there, and now, of course, I'm getting into the Exo-6 thing. And yeah, toys are kind of a big part of my life in general, not just in Star Trek, but well beyond into a lot of other franchises. So it's always fun for me to find a way to talk to someone who's doing toys professionally and also in the vein, in the realm of Star Trek, and that's who today's guest is. If the name Ben Robinson sounds familiar to you, well, it's maybe not just because he's, currently helping out over at Fanhome and Master Replicas, but he was also a guest on this show about 4 years ago or so. And back then, Ben was representing Eaglemoss, which is a company a lot of collectors will know because they produced all the different die-cast starships across, really, I think they made about over 400 ships, in fact. So they covered the whole gamut of all the different eras of Star Trek, making really wonderful models. But not that long ago, Eaglemoss, out of nowhere, went belly up. And that left a lot of fans wondering what's going to happen next to all these starships, what's going to happen next to all the products that they teased. And well, for a while, there was a lot of uncertainty. But luckily now, we have Master Replicas and we have Fanhome doing more Star Trek things. And of course, Ben Robinson is along for the ride in very big, important roles with both those companies. And besides being in the toy world, Ben is also a true Star Trek historian. He has written many books about Star Trek, which were distributed through Eaglemoss, as well as, I believe, some other companies here. But Ben knows his stuff, whether it's production of a toy or production on a Starfleet set. So today's conversation with Ben is going to be talking about, well, really not just talking about, but filling in a lot of the gaps for what's happened in the last few years with this particular section of Star Trek collectibles. We're going to learn about what happened to Eaglemoss, what caused them to shut down their doors, and what led then to Master Replicas coming in to make the save, and ultimately where we are now with Fanhome reviving the subscription model that Eaglemoss made popular with their Star Trek ships, and now where the new direction is going to go, as well as a very cool announcement that was just made recently that Ben's going to tell you all about. And this one for me is one that has me beyond excited, but I can't spoil it here. You guys need to keep watching and listening to hear what that one's going to be. But hey, heads up for you collectors out there, you better start saving up some money. So there are many points of articulation in this conversation today, and I highly recommend you check this one out because Ben Robinson has a lot of great things to say, not just as a toy maker, but as a fan and a part of this community. So let's go ahead, sit down, and chat with Ben Robinson. But before we get into our interview with this week's guest, I want to ask you guys if you are following Trek Untold on social media. You can follow Trek Untold on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all at Trek Untold. And stay tuned, we're probably going to pop up on Blue Sky very, very, very soon. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, please make sure you are subscribed to it wherever you are listening to it. And if you can, leave a 5-star review and rating when possible. If you're one of the fine folks out there who is watching this on YouTube, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date on all the latest episodes that are coming out. If you're in a position to financially support this show, please consider doing that on Patreon. And you can help us out here by visiting patreon.com/trekuntold. Doing so will allow you to get all sorts of perks and bonuses, including early access to episodes, a chance to ask guest questions of your own, and a few other things here and there as we continue to build this Trek Untold community. So with all of that out of the way, it's time to beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. And joining us now across the screen once again, because we've talked to this person quite some time ago, and it's been a bit, Ben. And welcome back, Ben Robinson, Starship consultant with Fanhome, creative director for Master Replicas. Glad to have you here, man. It's good to see you.
Likewise, it's a real pleasure. I'm glad to still be doing this. A lot's happened since we last talked.
Oh my goodness, yes, it has. I can't believe what a journey it's been. And I did just see you recently in New York at New York Comic Con, but it was so fleeting because you were busy as heck that day. I mean, New York Comic Con, it's 4 days of insanity. So I'm just happy I got to see your physical presence and shake your hand for the brief moment I did, because you're amazing. Love chatting with you. Love seeing you in person. And NYCC was a big deal for you guys too, because that basically was Fanhome's debut in New York, and that was the first time a lot of those starships were being seen. So just real quick, how was the event for you guys?
Oh, it was fascinating. I mean, it was interesting for me because I'm a consultant with Fanhome, so basically they rescued the starships is the one way of looking at it.
Bless them.
And I came with the starships. They obviously are using it as a big launch platform for all this other stuff they're doing. They've got some amazing, cool stuff. Some of which I worked on, some of which I didn't. So the Batmobile I worked on, the '66 Batmobile, and they didn't have it in New York, but they do. The Enterprise D big model that I worked on, and the Back to the Future, and the Ectomobile, the Ghostbusters car. So they specialize in all these great big models, and the kind of little starships, they're bigger than they used to be, are a bit of an anomaly for them, but it was really cool to see them all out together and to get them finally get them in front of people, after I don't know how long it is since we released the last Eaglemoss one. So it was really good to kind of get that sense of here we go again, one a month, let's get going.
Yeah, there was a lot of buzz around the booth. I mean, your booth was always packed. That's the truth. Whenever I came by to try and find you, it was always swarming with people taking photos, just looking at everything. You guys had people building the Iron Man model there as well, which is beautiful. Beautiful thing that Fanhome has there as well. And I gotta say, also, I'm a Ghostbusters guy. I know that was a former Eaglemoss thing too, but seeing the Millennium Falcon that you guys are doing at Fanhome, that thing was wow. Wowie, wow.
Yeah, I can't take any credit for any of those. They're my consultancy. So it's interesting. They've been around for a while, and those products have been available outside the US for a long time. But now a few of the guys who used to work at Eaglemoss have joined with them, and they have a different understanding, I guess, of the US market. And they're really pleased to try and get those things out there and get them in front of people. So I'm just a fan like anybody else when it comes to the Falcon or that great big Iron Spider that they had. Those are all things that I'm like, wow, this is good. But yeah, they do some lovely stuff, and I think they're a really good home for the Star Trek stuff. I feel very relaxed about that, very very happy and confident that they're the people doing it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It feels like just such an easy marriage between the two companies. But speaking of, let's start by just backing this interview up for a second here, because, as we mentioned, a lot has happened since we last spoke, which was, by the way, episode 32 of this show, December 10, 2020, Ben, 2020.
2020.
I couldn't believe it either.
Ago. 4 years ago. What was happening 4 years ago? Was that in the pandemic?
It was. We were basically still in the pandemic. Yeah, and again, episode 32, I was still figuring my things out as far as this podcast goes. Now I'm up to almost episode 200. A lot has happened for the both of us. Let's just put it that way. In Star Trek terms, it's been a long road getting from here to there. But back then we were talking Eaglemoss Hero Collector. You guys were doing the Build an Enterprise kit. You guys had all the starships, and then all of a sudden one day, Eaglemoss is effectively no more. And if you don't mind, I'm very interested in hearing what happened. What caused the company to close their doors? Because I don't know if I've really heard the full story and what you're allowed to say that is, but what the story is behind what happened to the company.
Well, I don't know that I know the full story. I was an employee, and obviously I was running a big chunk of it, but I wasn't responsible for any of the kind of business decisions. From where I was and what I saw, the owners basically wanted to sell the company. That was their goal. And they got a bit confused by the pandemic to some extent. The sales boomed during the pandemic. Everyone was stuck at home. Everyone was like looking for stuff to collect and build and all that kind of thing. And they went for a very aggressive expansion plan, which it required us to sell a certain amount of stuff in order to fund it. And it didn't sell as fast as they'd hoped, and they didn't have deep enough pockets to hold on until it had sold. So suddenly they'd spent money buying stock, and then they weren't getting the money in, so they couldn't afford to pay their bills, and it all collapsed like a kind of a concertina or some dominoes falling over. And from the inside, it was quite a sort of slow, scary thing. And obviously at the time I was an employee, so I wasn't allowed to talk about it. Now Eaglemoss no longer exists, so I'm more than free to express my opinions. It wasn't that the products weren't making, the products I was working on weren't making money. It was more that they had an over ambitious, overly aggressive plan that backfired on them.
Because that was like one of the things I'd hear all the time in the different groups, how people would be saying, oh, the ships are this, they're not making enough money, they're not selling enough, whatever. But it's interesting to hear that it was actually quite the opposite. It was more just like you guys were selling a lot, but there were just bigger plans that were maybe too ambitious, like you said, and that's what kind of led to the demise, unfortunately.
Yeah, that and the fact that there was a legacy business as well, that, as a part work company. I mean, in America, I think people thought of Eaglemoss as the Star Trek ships guys. And obviously that was a very important part of the company, but it was only a part of it. And there was a massive business outside the US. We did Marvel movie figurine collection. We did, we were doing Harry Potter collection. We were doing knitting with Disney Cakes and Sweets. There was a Brazilian car collection. There was a load of stuff the company was doing that had nothing to do with the Star Trek stuff, and that business, that business is a challenging business, is going through structural changes. So any of the companies that are still involved in it are still having a hard time. So it's absolutely not that we were doing Star Trek ships that were too obscure and nobody wanted them anymore, which I'm sure was the speculation for a lot of people.
Do you think it was the ambition or just spreading the resources too thin? Because again, like I remember back in 2020, we were at Toy Fair, and I was actually hired by Eaglemoss at the time, by you, in fact, to shoot the booth and do some videos for you guys. And that's when you guys debuted all the Harry Potter stuff. You were getting into like cooking stuff. Of course, you guys had all the books and things. So was it kind of just maybe like going too deep into too many things at once? Or just...
No, I just think the pockets weren't quite deep enough. They weren't really interested in the long-term health of the company.
Okay. So
they were operating on a kind of like, let's grow it quickly and sell. That's not the best thing for a company.
No.
But as I say, I was an employee, so I don't necessarily know the full story. They didn't tell me everything, so I was hearing it second, third hand sometimes.
Well, I think that fills in a lot of pieces of the puzzle for many people, and I think it is telling a story that's important to know about this place. And from there, our tale does shift from Eaglemoss over to Master Replicas. And this was a huge coup for them because they basically got all the inventory that was left over as far as like Starships went, some other products, the books, all the different novelty things as well. I had known them previously from like their Jurassic Park replicas. They did some stuff like 2001: A Space Odyssey, but getting Star Trek for Master Replicas, that was massive for them. So do you know how much about like how that deal actually came to be?
Yes, it's all quite boring though. I mean, basically, when Eaglemoss had overinvested in stock, so if you wanted reasons why it went bust, is that they had a lot of stock, and it was all in a lot of different warehouses around the world. It was in a slightly illogical state. There was too much stock of some things and not enough of other things. And basically the administrator, so it wasn't even Eaglemoss that sold it off. I mean, once the company had gone into administration, I don't know, I just kind of whatever happens after Chapter 11, I'm not quite sure how it works in the States. They had to sell that stuff off, and Master Replicas was a dormant brand at the time, but the parent company stepped in and bought the stock. They'd been buying a certain amount of it. Then they started working out how to sell it, and my gratitude. The people at CBS and Paramount recommended that they should sell online the way Eaglemoss have been doing, and that they should bring me in to help them, which is exactly what happened, and that did extremely well. It was important. Well, it was important for us to get some of the product out, but it also showed that there was a really viable business there, and that encouraged the people behind Master Replicas to invest in continued production and to do new things. So they've gone out and signed a load of licenses, and I'm now happily developing products in a very, very similar way to the way I was at Eaglemoss, but with a bit more freedom. We just did the Picard teacups, which are literally just being manufactured and shipped now. So that was a collaboration with Bodum, who made the original prop, or the original cups that were used as props. They hadn't been available for a few years, so we talked to them and they made them available again. And there's this sort of special Star Trek edition. Also, the Master Replicas guys had lots of experience with plush, with board games, with things that Eaglemoss had never touched. So I've been having quite a lot of fun. I'm looking around to see if I've got a Moopsie plush that I can wave at anyone, but it's out of sight. It's escaped. That's a bit worrying. So they can do everything Eaglemoss could do, only more. So it's quite exciting from that point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I think thanks to the Star Trek license and just getting those ships in the first place, they've been able to really expand dramatically, and I'm pretty excited to see what they're doing now. It's great for them. But we do got to move now over to Fanhome, because that's where you're now the creative consultant for the Starships. And kind of similar question here. I mean, when did Fanhome step in? What was the process? And what was the reaction?
So DeAgostini, who are the company behind Fanhome, are one of the few other partwork companies. They're a really big company with massive product line and resources. And they were one of the companies that looked briefly at the prospect of buying Eaglemoss. That didn't work out for all sorts of reasons. But what they were straight away interested in continuing as many of the product lines as they could, practically. So they stepped in and signed the build-ups and the rights to do the ships. The build-ups were obviously the priority because people were left with half-built models. And the most important thing was to get it so people could complete those models. So that was happening kind of almost from day one. I mean, or day -1, depending on how you want to look at it. So yeah, they were, but then, it was a competitive bidding process, and there were other companies that were interested, and CBS Paramount had to be happy, and they also had to be, they had to be convinced that everything was going to get completed properly, and that people weren't going to be left. 3 months later, it wasn't going to be like, oh, well, actually, we're not going to finish this model, or it all had to be done properly, and these things just take time.
Right.
I mean, it just takes longer than you think. So then, about a year ago, we actually started proper, 1 a month kind of redevelopment on the Starships. I mean, that's the thing; it takes a year from beginning to end to get these things out. So I was sending files for the Titan, just a little bit over a year ago, and drawing up lists of what would be possible.
It's basically back to business, though. That's kind of the good news about this. This is kind of like, back to the way it was a few years ago. We're now going to get 1 ship a month. This is exciting for all of us. And I do kind of want to start asking, because I know there's been a lot of excitement around this return, but I also know there's a little bit of skepticism as well. There's some concern. A lot of fans are worried about this and that, and it's understandable. So I think what I kind of want to start things off by asking is, in regards to Fanhome, what is going to be different for them compared to, let's say, what you guys did at Eaglemoss? And when I say that, I mean, let's just talk ships in particular. Has the construction changed? Has the materials changed? Packaging? Is anything different, or is it all going to be kind of same as usual?
It's fundamentally the same. It's the same me. It's the same factory. Obviously, they brought a kind of fresh eye into it and looking for any improvements that we can make. Everyone talks about the misaligned windows. They're still looking into ways of trying to address that, but it's extremely difficult, and it's a trade-off that I can speak about at length. But ultimately, it comes down to an opinion that I think if you don't mold the windows it makes the model look less detailed than it should, and getting them aligned with that kind of pinpoint precision is extremely difficult, particularly at a price point that people can afford. You know, if you want to go in and paint them all individually by hand, then you can have it, but you'll just have to pay twice as much for your ship, because you're going to be spending hours and hours and hours painting each individual window.
Yeah, I'll leave that to the professional painters in this collection, in this community. So yeah, not for me, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I had a little look at the packaging and all of that, but fundamentally, I don't think there was anything wrong with what we were doing. So the idea is just to carry on with the best bits from what there was before.
And I also know that with Fanhome now, these guys are kind of focusing more on the new Trek shows as opposed to some of the classic legacy Trek shows. We can talk about that in a little bit as well. But I kind of want to actually start just by talking about what is new. So what are the initial offerings for Fanhome with this new subscription you guys are doing?
I mean, one thing everyone has to remember is that Eaglemoss had done 400 odd ships. So
only 400.
In terms of only 400, yeah, exactly. But in terms of the legacy ships, we had done pretty much everything. I mean, there are still obscure Delta Quadrant ships that appeared in one episode and were never seen again. And I'm sure everybody can think of something significant that wasn't done. But the real, the heart of this collection has always been Starfleet ships. That's what, I don't think anyone would be surprised to hear that they sell better than anything else. So one of the things that Fanhome were able to take advantage of was the fact that there had been a little lull. And particularly with Picard season 3, there suddenly were a lot more Starfleet ships than there had been before. A lot of things that had been in STO that got ported over to Picard and became proper hard canon. And obviously there were new ships. There's the Titan, there's the Stargazer, and then Prodigy as well had introduced us to the Protostar and the Voyager A, which we hadn't had a chance to see. So it was great to be able to sort of go, okay, look, there's a proper catalogue of exciting Starfleet ships that we can do. And obviously now we're waiting to see what there is coming in Section 31 and Starfleet Academy. I've heard some things. But,
I'm sure you have.
I haven't got anything that I can share, or even not that much that I've even seen myself, to be honest. They keep tweaking these things right up to broadcast, so there's always a kind of trade-off between trying to get something early and then discovering that it doesn't look like that anymore. So basically, the Fanhome offering is a lot of ships from Star Trek Picard, mostly Starfleet ships. Strange New Worlds, absolutely any Starfleet ship that turns up in Strange New Worlds and goes straight onto my list is like top of the list for me. And Prodigy, and some stuff from Lower Decks. So, I mean, that's a good time for Star Trek. There's some good shows on. And then, yes, the list that's been released doesn't currently have anything from Discovery, and I'm going to do something about that. That is something that needs to be addressed. So the list of 20 may not be the final list of 20. I'm just waiting to see whether they want to go beyond 20 at the moment. But if not, there will be some adjustments. Particularly to take account of that absence of Discovery stuff, and to make sure that anything new and exciting from Section 31 gets in there as well.
So there is a list out there online, and folks can take a look at that if they want to actually get the full rundown of every single ship that's been announced so far. But for you, Ben, let's kind of highlight a few. What are some of your personal favorites that are coming out in this initial wave?
I think, the Titan stroke Enterprise G has really grown on me. I mean, I think, every time you see a new Enterprise, you're always kind of like, is it better than the others, or how is it controversial compared to the others? Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, God knows how controversial the Enterprise D was when it first came out. We all forget that people were like, oh my God, about that.
Nobody wants the fat one.
No, indeed. Though it turns out that's not quite true. But yeah, so the Titan, I think I've really come to. It's sitting here on my desk, has been all along. I'm not even sure how final this version is, actually.
And on that note, too, just since you're bringing up the Titan, I know that Eaglemoss did do the Titan before things wrapped up, right? So is there a difference?
Oh, well, the Titan, not the Titan A.
Oh, not Titan A, that's right.
So we did, yes. I mean, well, the Titans, yes, all of the all of the STO ships that made it into Star Trek Picard got a bit of an upgrade for their TV appearances, and also we're doing them at a different size than they were done previously.
Right.
So they're at the kind of mid-scale that we introduced when we started doing Discovery. I mean, basically, Fanhome took a look at it and decided that the smaller ships aren't really commercially viable, or that they would have to cost a lot more, and that it's not as good value for people as well. So they rapidly came to the conclusion that the mid-size and was a better deal all around for everybody. So that's where they are. So other ships that I really like, all of them are fine designs. I mean, for me, the Farragut is very exciting because we used to sort of an age where I watched the original series and tried to glean every piece of information you possibly could. And the Farragut's one of those kind of mythical ships that's mentioned but never seen. So that's been very satisfying. I think I'm really looking forward to the Protostar. I haven't. I get these kind of sizing dummies, so I haven't had one of those for that just yet, but that'll be soon. The Voyager A. Do you have a sizing dummy? I can weigh this. So I'm very wary about showing these to people, because what happens is people go, "Oh, that's rubbish," because it's just a kind of thing that's put together by the factory to show how big something's going to be, and just to make sure that everything fits together. So I don't share these, because then people get confused and think that's the actual product.
Well, disclaimer, this is just for testing purposes. Let's leave it at that way. This is not the final product.
Exactly.
And anything you see, folks, in this video here does not necessarily represent the final product. There's the
No, it represents what's on my desk, which could be anything.
Your desk is like Santa's workshop as far as I'm concerned. There's so much good stuff probably all over that desk.
There's a lot of Daleks on my desk at the moment. A lot of Daleks, a lot of Doctor Who stuff. Bit of Star Trek. Might have a Stargate here or there. Yes, it is like a madman's desk, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I think all the new ships are looking pretty good. I haven't seen anything that's made me think, which obviously in 400 ships at Eaglemoss you did occasionally think. But yeah, they've all turned out really nicely. But those ones are the highlights. And the Stargazer is really nice as well, which is the second issue. And I think that's a really kind of classically designed, John Eves, Doug Drexler ship. And it looks really nice.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for that one. That's the one that really caught my attention at the booth. And one of the other things that I'm really liking, and that I got to see a little bit at the booth as well, was that there's much more of an emphasis on the XL ships. And that's going to be, I know, part of the main subscription line. And I think it's been also a point of controversy for some fans. Because some folks like it, others want things just to be in the one scale. So what is this kind of new philosophy? Because this is a new thing from Fanhome. You guys always did XL ships, but now it's like to have more of them involved in the subscription model. What is the philosophy behind this?
So the way Fanhome do things is that every fourth ship is a special issue in some way, so an XL issue. So, we've got the Enterprise F, we've got the Enterprise G is an interesting example because we've got the Titan at one scale, and then we've got the Enterprise G at the other. But the big important capital ships will be XL. So, you're looking at the Enterprise G, the Voyager A, the Protostar. These are the ones that will be done as XL. And I'm still trying to work out because it's every fourth issue. I'm trying to work out which issue 20 should get the XL treatment. But that's their approach. So if you subscribe, your every fourth issue is bigger and a little bit more expensive. And obviously you will be able to buy them individually. The good news is that the first, they order in waves, so they order a certain quantity. The good news is that first quantity was taken out by all the subscribers, so there was nothing left over. But they've reordered. So if you haven't subscribed yet and you want to, you'll be able to. And when that stock comes in, then people will be able to buy individually. So I'm not sure exactly when that's due. I think it's more sort of like January, February. So it's just a little bit after they were originally hoping they'd be able to offer them for individuals. So, but it's coming. It's coming. You will be able to get them.
So be patient, basically.
Yeah, not people's strong suit. Not after. No, it's been a long.
We're collectors, so yeah, we don't have patience. We want things. But on that note too, by the way, since we're talking a little bit about the XLs and the sizing of things here, this is something I'm positive we talked about in 2020. I forgot to double check this one here, but A constant discussion in the community of collectors of this type of product is the sizing with ships next to each other, the scale of the ships to each other. I saw the eye roll. There's the eye roll for folks who are not listening. For the folks who are only watching this, or the folks who are listening and not seeing the video version, yeah, that's a heck of an eye roll right there, and I get it, because I know you've heard this tons, so I just kind of want to clear this up one more time. Let's talk about the scales and why ships cannot really be in scale with each other.
Well, the first thing to say is that we wanted everything to be the same price. This is it started off life as a subscription program, and the idea was that people knew exactly what they were going to pay every month, and they were going to get all the ships. So you don't want to go, okay, here's one that's 2 inches long, and then because it's in scale, here's one that's 20 inches long, and they can't both be the same price. I mean, that's just simple reality is. You're either overpaying for one or underpaying for one. And if you underpay for one, the company goes bust. I mean, oh yeah, that happened. So that was one concern. And then there's a practical concern as well tell me how big a bird of prey is. I mean, the Star Trek visual effects department don't know how big a bird of prey is. It varies from movie to TV to TV to TV. It's as big as it needs to be. Or, if you want to do a model of Voyager, or Vija, sorry. What is it? Well, you want to do Voyager and Vija. One of them is going to be this big. One of them is going to be so big that my hands can't fit on the screen. Or the Voth City ship, so I appreciate why people want things to be in scale, but they would be different prices. They would be massively different sizes. We're not talking about subtly different sizes, and it just isn't really practical. And we've all seen the pictures of people's display cabinets. I think that was the goal, was to create something that would fit nicely on a shelf and would fit nicely in a display cabinet. And we seem to have succeeded in that. So I kind of feel like we made the right choice.
So looking ahead now, this kind of is a bigger picture question, I guess, because we talked a little bit about those legacy ships earlier. And I'm wondering, I guess, two things. And that would be number one, does Fanhome have the rights to do the legacy ships? And would they consider maybe doing re-releases or even new molds with updated sculpting, things like that? Like, is that a potential thing we could see down the line?
Yes, I mean, they have the rights to make any of the ships that Eaglemoss previously released. I think it is quite likely that they would look at re-releasing some of the XLs in particular. We know that we can see that there's demand for those, and it's something that I've said to them is would make sense at some point. They certainly have talked to me about doing convention specials, exclusives. We'd started doing the gold ships, and I think there's every reason to think that would continue. So that's all in discussion. Realistically, what they're looking at is going to be it would be the XLs or possibly some of the mid-sized ships, but I don't know that there's as much demand for those. And in terms of the tooling, once something's being tooled, the cost of the tooling is massively prohibitive. I mean, it's a really, really expensive thing. So retooling something because a few people felt that it was inadequate. I mean, I'm not saying the tooling's perfect on any of them. Well, it's pretty good on most of them, but there are a few things that weren't quite perfect. It's just not really economic to retool things. It's I know people want perfection and everything, but the numbers just aren't high enough to justify the expense of retooling.
Well, at the very least, it is reassuring to know, though, that there is a potential maybe for those older ships and that maybe folks don't need to go spending eBay prices on some of these products. So, again, maybe patience. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident that they'll get remade at some point. I think it's the Enterprise A and the Enterprise C that are very hard to come by in the XL, and that people are paying a lot of money for those on eBay. And I'd hope that eventually they'll be re-released. But but equally, I have to say there's no current plan. I mean, there's I expect it to happen, but it's not going to happen in the next 6 months for sure.
Now, on also talking about scale for a minute here, we know you guys do the subscription-based build-a-ship thing, essentially. So we talked about the Enterprise D, got one of those. Does Fanhome have any interest in doing another, I think maybe a new Star Trek show, a larger starship in that kind of subscription model where you're building it piece by piece?
It's been mentioned. It's been discussed. I mean, there's a lot of work that has to be done to look into it and see how much sense it makes. But yes, it's definitely something that they are interested in investigating. Let's put it that way.
Okay, investigating is a good enough word. We'll take that for now because it's still early on. I mean, we all have this like giant wish list of things we want to see, and that's from me as well. Like I'm curious to see what you guys are going to do. For you, Ben, actually, I'm kind of curious to know what is your wish list with Fanhome. What ships or things do you want to see them produce?
I mean, for me, the important thing is that there aren't significant ships that aren't covered. So I am really pleased that the ships from Prodigy are getting done. The collection should never feel incomplete in my mind. That you shouldn't be sitting there going, inevitably there will be something that people haven't got. The original series 1968 version of the Imorg ship, for example, or something like that. But I think we should definitely. For me, I would like it to make sure that every Starfleet ship has been covered. The more significant alien ones as well. We're being cautious. I think we know the appetite for Starfleet ships is strong enough. It's less clear that the appetite for alien ships is strong enough. I'd hope it is, but it's if you don't get as many people buying them as we're buying them when Eaglemoss was making them, then it won't work. So Gorn ships or new Romulan ships from Strange New Worlds or whatever, I can't guarantee. I'd like to get to them, but we just have to see how the sales go. So far so good, but we're not quite there yet.
And just also kind of going back to our times at Eaglemoss for a second here, because we talked earlier in the interview how they had ambitious plans. They were dipping their toes into a lot of different waters. They were doing books, they were doing cooking stuff, they were doing yarn kits and things like that. I'm assuming that Fanhome will not be going into any of those directions for the most part, but the one thing I'm wondering about is the books, because books were a big part of what happened to Eaglemoss. You were a part of many of those as well, and they were brilliant books.
Thank you.
Is that something that Fanhome has interest in going into, at least just maybe a small niche away from models?
I don't think so. They haven't mentioned. I mean, I think there is a future for books and me and books. But basically, Titan, who publish a lot in this space, have picked up the rights to republish those books. I know they're reissuing some of them. I don't know. I'm not over the detail. I made sure they had all the files so they could do it, but I'm not 100% clear about what they're actually going to publish and when. But they are doing that, and I need to talk to them about whether they have an interest in completing the Shipyards books. There are 2 more volumes of Alpha Quadrant ships that were ready to go, almost ready to go. Obviously, the problem is that there are new ships added every time there's a new show. There are new ships, so those books need to be updated. But Titan have the rights to do that. In terms of myself and books, I mean, immediately after Eaglemoss, I joined a company called Insight Editions. It's a very nice book publishing company. But then all this other stuff was going on at the same time, and it kind of like I had to make a choice. But they published the book that Nana wrote, Nana Visitor wrote, which we started at Eaglemoss, and Nana I worked on. I was, talking to her about it and helping tell her which episodes to watch, and sitting in on the interviews and asking questions. So that's out now. That's called Open a Channel, and I'm really proud of that book. Though Nana's the one who deserves all the credit. But that book, for those who don't know, that book looks at Star Trek's portrayal of an influence on women. And I think it's an interestingly different take on Star Trek, and it certainly opened my eyes to things that I didn't realize or know. So that's sort of the latest book I've been involved in. I'm in the middle of some conversations about some books. I don't know what I can say. I'm trying to not say anything too much. There are a couple of books that there's one particular thing and one kind of project which is bigger than a single book, which I have been very keen on at Eaglemoss, and it looks like I found a way to make those happen. And if that does, it will mean I'll be very busy until I die. Because I'll still be killing down 3 other jobs and whatever. But so I have hopes that I will be able to continue being involved in Star Trek publishing. I'd love to find a way of reviving the Celebration series. A little bit concerned about whether I would ever have time to do it, because there's the number of hours that went into those 2 books.
Yes,
is kind of off the scale.
those were amazing books, though. Those were such amazing resources.
Thank you. I'm very proud of those books. And Ian Spelling had done a lot of work on a TNG Celebration book, but I never got to my bits on that. But Ian had done a lot of work on that, and obviously, Ira Bear I consider Ira Bear to be a good friend. So I would love to do a Deep Space Nine book, and I would love to do something on the new shows. But Titan have got plenty of, I gather, quite a healthy pipeline of Star Trek books coming. So finding a slot and finding the time to write them and all of that is a bit of a challenge. But I have it may be a little while before I can announce them, but I have high hopes for some really ambitious Star Trek publishing. I think more ambitious than anything that we've done before.
Well, I hope that they happen. Yeah, I definitely hope that they happen. And since we also mentioned the Na Visitor's book, I don't know when this episode of our discussion is going to air, but we have spoken to Nana, so either it's on this channel now or it's going to be very, very soon. But we talked all about that book. And your reaction, your description is very much the same way I felt about it. I read it, and it was honestly life-changing. If I'm going to recommend Star Trek books, I'm putting that at the top of my list now. That is a number 1 read to get for sure.
I mean, the thing about Star Trek, and particularly about Star Trek publishing, is I've always seen it as a lens to look at society through. Yes, it's about Star Trek, but actually it's about society, and it's about Hollywood, and it's about what it's been like to be a woman, and how that's changed in the 60 years since Star Trek's been on air. If you get it right, the book does what Star Trek itself does, and it's about something. And I think that book is about something. It's very difficult because obviously I worked on it with Nana, and we talked about every chapter before she wrote it, and I edited them, and she reworked them based on the kind of things that we talked about. So all the life-changing stuff happened to me in the writing of the book.
Happened in real time, basically.
Yeah, so it took 3 years for me. It took 3 years to change my life, whereas you can read it in 3 hours.
I think it might be better 3 years because you got more time to let each little bit take you in. Whereas I'm reading this book in 3 hours, I'm like, oh, I now feel like 100 pounds is on top of me. It's a lot to take in there. There is so much. That book is so heavy, but it's such a great, amazing book. I really can't say enough good things about it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I as I say, it's not absolutely Nana's book, but I was very involved. So I feel proud,
as you should.
And I think I do actually think it is it's certainly an important subject, and I think it's quite an important book. I think, and certainly if you like Star Trek and you want to know more about what it was like to make it, and what the people who made it was like, and how their experience has changed, then I don't think you could ask for more on that front.
Now, we've spent a great length of time here talking about Fanhome and talking a bit about Eaglemoss, this and that. But we only kind of mentioned Master Replicas a little bit here and there. I know you're doing a lot more things with those fine folks. So talk to us, Ben, about what's going on over at Master Replicas, because you guys have a lot of really, really excellent licenses over there.
Well, a lot of licenses, yes. I'm just looking at that at the moment. So we have Star Trek stuff. As I said, we did the Bodum teacups. We've done the Moopsie plush, which we can't keep in stock.
Everybody wants that Moopsie. They want their bones to be sucked.
Yes, funny that everybody wants psychopathic plush. But we're doing that. That's been a great pleasure. We've got a bunch of new product that, depending on when we go out, may or may not have been announced. But there's a lot of stuff that's coming that I think makes me smile. So it's great to be able to do some product that makes people smile. It's like, I think since Think Geek went down, there's been an absence funny, witty product.
Mm.
And there's definitely opportunities to do that, and there's opportunities to do more than that.
And besides all that, Ben, I know that you guys just recently had a really massive announcement over on Master Replicas. This is I got goosebumps right now thinking about it. I'm not going to say anything. Please take it away. Tell us what's going on.
So we have the action figure license for all the new shows.
I'm excited.
I'm excited. I mean, and I guess by now people will have seen images of what we're doing, and it's cool. It is really nice stuff. So we have the license for everything from Discovery onwards. Where that includes Star Trek Picard, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy, and I very much wanted this to be a collection that would sit alongside people's Playmates action figures. I know there are a lot of people who've got a lot of Playmates figures out there,
Self included.
so
yes.
they're 4.5 inches. They're a bit more realistic, I guess, than the Playmates ones, which are a little bit stylized. But I wanted it to work so that you could put them alongside your Playmates ones and feel, okay, now I've got that character. And also because there are so many, and I'm learning a lesson from Eaglemoss, we're going to be releasing them fast. So there are going to be 2 new figures every month.
Oh wow!
So and plus some specials and some play sets, and I just hope everybody wants them. Otherwise, we'll have to stop.
Well, as soon as you said play sets, my interest got even more piqued because I was going to ask you about that, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, I'm looking at how big of a playset for the Enterprise bridge from Strange New Worlds would have to be. It looks like we're going to have to scale that a little bit. Otherwise, you won't be able to get it in your house. But so that's been very exciting, and I had a lot of experience with likeness sculpts at Eaglemoss. We did a lot of Marvel and Doctor Who and Game of Thrones and all of that, so that's not a new learning curve for me. And the Master Replicas guys have a lot of experience with action figures, so it's exciting, and it is a big deal. And I hope it's what everybody wants, and I hope it works.
I mean, honestly, I'm just excited because 2025 is becoming like the best year to be a Star Trek fan now, it feels like, because we have Nacelle Company doing their things, we have you guys doing your things, and also the interesting thing to note is both companies are doing very distinctively different things. Nacelle is doing like their 6-inch, 7-inch-ish figures. You guys are doing more in the classic Playmate style. And I think they're spending more time in Legacy Trek, whereas you guys are Modern Trek. And I do want to ask on that note, are you guys exclusively New Trek, or can you go into the Legacy Trek?
At the moment, it's carved up. So basically, Nacelle have everything up to Nemesis, I think, and we have everything after Nemesis.
Okay.
So, and that will keep everybody busy for a while. I made a list of characters we ought to do, and it's like, oh my God, it's like 70, 80, 90 characters. I'm like, these are essential. We've got Section 31 and Starfleet Academy. I don't even know what the characters in Starfleet Academy look like yet. But I put them on the list. I'm like, yes, we'll do that. I'm very excited to be doing that. And I think, the great advantage of those 4.5-inch figures is that you can have a lot of them. And you really can populate a whole universe of characters, and you can, as I showed them to Mike McMahon, and Mike McMahon's like, "Yay, Boimler's going to get to hang out with Kirk."
Finally,
my favorite figure so far is Mariner. There's something about the Lower Decks characters that just really lend themselves to that kind of scale of action figure. All the action figures are great and have made me smile. But Mariner has really, really made me happy. And I hope she will, and Boimler and Tendi and Rutherford and all of those characters will really make people happy. And I think, those shows, Lower Decks and Prodigy, deserve all the love that they can get.
I mean, I'm very happy that Lower Decks is getting figures. And I'm also happy that Prodigy will get represented, it sounds like, because Playmates had that, and they really kind of dropped the ball, let's be honest. I mean, Playmates got the whole line back. They were able to do some Prodigy stuff, but we never got our Janeway. We never got our Rock. There's so much that they didn't do.
Those two are first on my list.
Yeah.
So, They'll be the first ones we do. I mean, the thing people have to understand is the business model. So if you are making action figures that you are selling in Walmart or Target, and that's a big part of your business, you have to do really big numbers. You have to be, if you're selling to kids, you have to be as cheap as you possibly can be, and all of those things make Star Trek very challenging for a conventional action figure company. So what you're seeing now is these kind of specialist companies like us and Nassau coming in and trying to do something that is more aimed at fans. It's very similar to what's happened to the comic book industry. Comic books used to be 12 cents on a spinner rack, and now they are not. But they're printed on beautiful paper, and they have long, complicated stories that you can follow, over the course of your entire life. What we're doing is saying, these are for really serious adult fans. We don't have to worry about appealing to 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds. We don't have to compete with the WWE figurines or action figures, that sell so much. So that's the goal, but it does depend on everybody coming to us and buying them. If they don't do that, when we won't be able to make enough. But we can make it work with significantly smaller sales than a Hasbro or a Mattel would need.
Well, let's kind of go into a little bit more detail about what these figures are going to be like, because we know that they are in Playmates scale, but what else will be same and different versus Playmates? And I'm talking about, let's say, articulation, accessories, and packaging, in particular, whether or not this will be collector-friendly packaging.
It's absolutely meant to be collector-friendly packaging, and we're even talking about some kind of additional collector editions. We haven't confirmed this yet, but the goal is to do some figures that come with swatches of fabric, like trading cards. So you'll get your Spock with a little piece of blue Strange New Worlds uniform in there that was actually used on set, or at least came from the costume department. I won't be able to trace it because it's only going to be a little swatch.
You're just on the set of Strange New Worlds with a pair of scissors following Ethan Peck around.
That's basically what's happening. Yes, someone's going to do that for us. They have a bin. They keep bits of fabric for us.
Well, I'm available for hire. Just saying.
Yeah, they said no, it's all right, we'll do that. I like you asked. In terms of points of articulation, they're very similar to the Playmates ones. The sophistication of action figures has come along quite a lot in the, oh God, how many years is it since Playmates were doing that?
Let's not talk about that.
So they'll be much more kind of, realistic, I guess, in their portrayal. And certainly the likenesses are really good from the ones I've seen so far. In terms of accessories, that's interesting. I had a debate with someone about this and saying, for me, what matters is that an accessory is logical rather than necessarily purely unique to that character. So I always remember when I had my Migos when I was a kid that I never had enough phasers and communicators. So I think lots of people will come with the same phaser. You won't have to be like, I've only got one phaser between these 6 people. But for me, that makes more sense than everybody having, Riker having a trombone, for example. I mean, that doesn't feel necessary to me. Yeah, I mean, there are a few details still to be fleshed out, but yeah, 2 or 3 accessories per character. Hexagonal bases, which is a thing I learned on Doctor Who. You have hexagonal bases. You can shove all the characters up close to one another, and they'll still stand up. I'm so excited for bases.
Right? I'm a base guy, so hearing you do that makes me very happy.
Yeah, I mean, I have a thing about I don't need to see another Delta as a base. I mean, I know why people do it. It is cool, but equally, I'm like, no, let's not put them on a Delta. I've seen that too often.
And on that note, too, do you guys have swappable heads and hands, as in that we could take them out, change them around?
Not the current plan.
Okay. This is more Playmate style, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. You do get into convention exclusives and things like that. So do you do Pike with the wraparound tunic, or do you do, I'm trying to think, do you do a Vulcan Pike, I guess we could do.
I was thinking of Pike funny. With normal hair, Pike with even taller hair.
We do an expansion set, the pump his hair up.
Yes.
Press a button and his hair gets higher and higher.
Gotta have a gimmick.
That might be beyond us. But yeah, the goal, I mean, for the moment, yes, we will do variants, but for the moment, you just look at the list of characters and you're like, wow, there's so many characters to get through. and obviously the important uniform variants. I mean, interesting question. You're looking at Discovery characters. It's like, do you want season 5? Do you want season 2?
Yeah.
Do we do a Pike from as he was in Discovery? There are 2 uniforms that he wears in Discovery. They're different from the uniform he wears in Stranger World. So all of that's there. But for the moment, the priority is going to be getting as many different characters out as possible. Get all the principal cast out. Get Hammer out. Get George Kirk out, or Sam Kirk, or hang on, well, he doesn't even know what his name is. So, yes, variants will come, but let's get everybody out.
I cannot wait. Like, this is such an amazing year, 2025. I didn't even mention Exo 6 in that mix, too. So we got, 3 different companies making just amazing Star Trek things, high-quality things for adult collectors. It's a good time to be a Star Trek fan, but there is, I guess, I want to call it an elephant in the room, but I don't really know. This is just more like an obscure thing I want to ask. There's some fans who like this, some who don't. But somewhere in the middle of Legacy Trek and New Trek is Kelvinverse Trek. And Fanhome, Master Replicas, do either of these companies have their fingertips in that area? Because I know Haya is doing some stuff in that area, but for you guys, is there any possibility to do anything in the Kelvinverse, in any company?
You know what? I haven't really thought about it. I mean, D'Agostini certainly have the Fanhome have the rights to do it, but Eaglemoss had pretty much covered off everything that had been seen in the films to date. Obviously, there are other Star Trek films on the horizon. Very interesting. At least one of them is going to be quite challenging to people, I think. And I don't know where the rights would be with that. I mean, the way licensing works is when something new comes along, there's a kind of understanding that it will be part of your rights, but until it exists, they can't give you the rights. So you have to wait until it's been registered on the system and created and that kind of thing. So one of the things we've been talking about at Master Replicas is Blade Runner. So we do have Blade Runner product coming in 2025, which is a long-held ambition of mine. But we also are talking to them about 2099, but at the moment, no one can tell you anything about 2099. So it's like, yes, we're probably interested, but can you tell us anything about it? And they're like, no, not yet. Michel Yeoh's in it.
So basically, the moral of the story is fans have to have patience. Even you, Ben, in your position, still have to have patience with a lot of this stuff, which is so hard to do.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and there are things that you just have to keep plugging away at, and you hope that you will eventually get. And yeah, I hope I'll be able to make some announcements about some of those things at some point. But there are always going to be things that elude you, things that like I wish I could do, and I keep trying, but the stars don't always align.
I feel like there's a pun in there for Star Trek, but I just don't want to take it. It's too easy, so I'm just going to skip on to that. But on that note, Ben, I mean, this has been a lot of great information today, just not only talking about the history of some previous places you've been at, but now just where we are at the future, and the future is very bright. So for folks who want to start spending some money, who want to start buying some Fanhome models, they want to start pre-ordering some Trek figures from Master Replica, can you give us a rundown of how we do all that?
So basically, the important thing to remember is that although I am the same person, they are different companies. So
very important, by the way. Ben's actually clogged himself to work at both places. That's how he gets that all done. It's amazing.
Oh my God, that's a scary thought. God, there's more than enough of me with one of me. So for the ships, you go to fanhome.com, and I guess by now most people know what that is and what they are. You can buy them on subscription, which means you'd be guaranteed of getting them, or you can buy them as individual ships, which you should be able to get what you want. But I know there are always going to be people who are like, I missed out on this one. And then Master Replicas, which is the goal is to build it into the premier destination for science fiction collectibles. So yes, Star Trek. I mean, like I said, we've done the Picard teacups, the Musi plush. We've got the action figures. We've got desk mats to go under your keyboard. Got some other very cool like mugs and cups and things like that. Anything cool that I can think of that's Star Trek related will go through that channel. But it's not just Star Trek. I mean, we've had a huge response to Stargate. That's been fantastic. We've got some new licenses that we've signed that we'll be announcing very soon. I don't want to don't spoil them just yet because we want to get as much coverage for them as we can. But I have said we're going to be doing some Blade Runner stuff in 2025. Got Doctor Who license. Has continued to do the Battlestar Galactica stuff we rescued from Eaglemoss, and I love Galactica. I mean, there's rarely been anything finer. Got the Expanse. Still got some stuff from the Orville. I mean, this is prime science fiction. All pretty much all the best brands, apart from that little Star Wars thing.
Never heard of it.
There's loads of really cool stuff there, and I hope loads more to come.
I mean, it is truly an exciting time to be a fan. I've been saying that this whole interview, and it's the truth. Like, just hearing all the stuff that's coming, seeing what's coming out from both Fanhome and from Master Replicas, it's wild. I don't know where I'm going to get the money for all this, Ben. We're going to have to rob a few banks maybe, but that's a problem for me to deal with later on. But either way, Ben, thank you so much for just running down everything that you're doing at Fanhome, at Master Replicas. You are like I said earlier, the Santa Claus of sci-fi, the Santa Claus of toys and stuff like that, and the Santa Claus of Star Trek. It's very true, and you get to live this dream. It's amazing. I'm so happy for you, and I hope that it's not another 4 years before we do this again, because I feel like there's a lot happening in all the different sci-fi realms you're in.
There are, if everything goes according to plan, within the next 3 to 6 months, I'll have some more really big announcements to make. Lots of stuff coming that I am very excited by and very happy about. And I am profoundly grateful that I get to do this for a living. I remember other people have to go to work. I mean, it is work. It is work, believe me. I mean, no one's slacking off. But the privilege of being able to work on the things that you love is extraordinary, and I never take it for granted.
Absolutely, and I'm so happy that you get to continue this dream, because I was worried after what happened with Eaglemoss. I was like, I know a lot of people over there, and I was like, I hope these guys bounce back, and everybody has, and they've come back stronger than ever. So I'm very, very happy for you, Ben, and for everything that you're doing, everything that you've worked on, and everything that you're striving to work on in the future. And I wish you, of course, much success in everything that you do. And again, folks, check out Fanhome, check out Master Replicas, spend some of that money, because I'm going to be doing it too. So again, Ben, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to follow this podcast on social media, go ahead and check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, all at Trek Untold. If you're listening to the audio version of this show, please leave a 5-star rating. Please leave a review if you can, and help us get into those wonderful algorithms that we need to do to grow this podcast. And likewise, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell to get all notifications for future episodes coming your way. If you're in a position to financially support Trek Untold, please consider doing so by visiting patreon.com/Trek Untold, where you can support the show for whatever amount you'd like, and every little bit helps us continue to go at full warp speed. Don't forget to check out the show notes for any important links to things we talked about in this week's episode, and links to our Amazon storefront where you can buy some Star Trek merchandise of your own that once again helps support this channel. So until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz. This has been Trek Untold, and as always, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars, is powered by the Rageworks Podcast Network and affiliated with Nerd News Today.